Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and welcome to another episode of Coaching Conversations. And I wanted to make you aware of something very cool that we're doing on a subscription basis, and we'll put a link in each one of our episodes. But every Wednesday, we're going to be doing what we call an audio podcast workshop. That workshop will be roughly about 14 to maybe 20 minutes per episode, with each month having a theme from a coaching model, using feedback strategically, to coaching self-awareness, and so on. So if you could, look in the body or in the content description of each episode, and you will see a link where you can join this subscription. These are literally 4 workshops every month, teaching specific strategies to address a particular area of workplace coaching, as it relates, again, to things like awareness, motivation, teamwork, and what have you. Here's the cool thing. It's only $10 per month, and each month you will get a handout that we will follow along with. So we also give you a tool for you to take notes as we go through each episode. We hope you'll check it out.
Wow, has today's employee changed? The pandemic has dramatically hit the way people think, the way they feel, the way they interact. And I think about 2 fundamental areas to start this podcast episode off. I think about stress versus resilience. My second thought is a good day's work. Recently, I was talking to someone who was hiring high school and college people, paying a good wage to do manual labor. It was in the construction business, and it's not easy work, right? And this person hired somebody by 2 o'clock, got a text saying, I'm going to go home for the day and rest. This is really hard work. It's much harder than I thought. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, by the way, it was his first day. He never returned back to the job. Now, he was also hired by somebody who is friends with his parents. Now, fundamentally think of that. First day on the job, you're leaving at 2 o'clock. What does that say about your character? Now, I'm going to make some observations. This is not labeling everybody. Let's think about the Great Resignation. I was talking to somebody who's part of the statistic. A person who said, I just resigned. I said, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know. I just needed time off. And I was stunned. Talented person. Now, what I would say was authentically, genuinely, transparently worn down. She was in a business that got clobbered by the pandemic. She was worn down. She needed a change, which I thought was great. So then I said to her, so how are you going to explain the whole? She said, excuse me? I said, well, how are you going to explain the whole? She said, what are you talking about, a hole? I said, the hole in your resume. Because you're going to have probably at your level 6 to 12 months to find your next gig. Oh, by the way, not independently wealthy person either. And she said, well, I haven't thought of that. I said, wow, I just wonder how much things are going to change when they go back to normal. And I said, what I mean by normal is when people don't have their picks of jobs. And she stopped. I could see, and we were on a Zoom call chatting. I could see in her face the concern. She said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, look, unemployment goes up and down. We've never had such a large exit of people leaving their jobs without having their next job secured, much like you. I said, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just wondering, how are you going to explain that? Because if you're going up against somebody for a director or VP a job, and that person's got to decide between yourself and somebody who didn't resign, who didn't on paper give in to the stress, I'm wondering if that person would have an advantage. And she got defensive. She goes, well, you don't understand what I've been through. I said, no, I don't. I said, I'm not saying how you're feeling and what you're doing isn't warranted. I'm asking, have you thought about how you're going to communicate that whole? And she just stopped and stared at me. I said, look, I'm not trying to be offensive. I think things are going to go back to normal. Do I think we're going to be in a hybrid virtual world? I said, yeah, for a long time. What I'm talking about getting back to normal is that when we're hiring and we have multiple candidates fighting for the same job, unemployment doesn't stay the same. It goes through market cycles, industry cycles. So I'm just wondering if you've thought that through. And again, she just stared at me. So when we think about stress and we think about resilience, I'm not saying this person is not resilient. I'm saying there's a perception of her giving in to the stress. Not because it was a bad decision. It's probably a great decision for her. Yet it will still down the road require explanation. Number two, if you have somebody who's putting in a good day's work and has worked through these times, on paper, will that person look like, that's my candidate. That's the person I need for my team because he or she really fought through some difficult times. Now, my friend is a fighter. She's tough. Yet on paper, you don't know that. In a traditional interview, you may not know that. You may not find that out. Now, I know the pandemic clobbered her. So when we think about today's employee, we have to think about helping them, asking questions, creating activities, creating diversions, creating fun, getting people to think differently. These are creatively some of the best times organizations have had and some of the worst. From an employee standpoint, these are some of the most difficult. Let me give you an illustration. We have a client in the financial services industry that were so frustrated. The thought of doing things virtually. The world was turned upside down. And people, and I'm literally not making this up. I would say 95% of the people, about 1,000 people in this company, absolutely, we got to get back to the office. I hate working at home. That company, less than 24 months later, is now having a major portion of their employees say, why can't we work at home? See, people's minds have shifted. The way they want to work, where they want to work, when they want to work has dramatically changed. And it goes back to, we as employers, and I'm an employer, we hire people to do a job. It's almost like employees are now hiring their employer based on the way they want to work. I think that's going to change. I think we're going to get back towards normal hiring, having multiple candidates for jobs, fighting for those jobs. We have to, as coaches, as leadership coaches, help our people see, I don't want to use the term repercussions, see the effects and potentially the perceptions that may even be unfair to them based on their current decisions. Let me give you another example. I was talking to a salesperson, and this person was at a company that was doing some great training, not a client of ours, doing great training, a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring, and their industry had gone through a tough time, and the person said, yeah, I'm thinking about leaving. I said, oh, why? He said, well, I got an offer for $20,000 more a year. I said, fantastic. And I had prescribed these same questions to a client of ours. And I said, well, let me ask you something. I said, why are you changing? Well, they're a little bit more flexible in their workplace policies. I said, well, how long are those policies going to stay in place? And his jaw dropped. He hadn't asked that question. See, I think people are very short-term thinkers right now versus long-term strategic thinkers because we're in this defensive stance right now, right? We just want to get through this thing. Number two, I asked him a great question. I think a great question. Said, you're going to move forward. You're going to go to this company. What plans do they have for your career? What are their career planning services like the mentoring and the coaching and the training you currently get from your employer? And his jaw dropped again. He said, wow, I hadn't thought of even asking those things. And I said, I'm wondering if that $20,000 more a year is actually going to be a decrease in pay long term. And I'm not talking 20 years. I'm talking maybe even 1 or 2 years. Now, again, this is not a client, yet he ended up staying at the company because he forgot his loyalties. By the way, loyal guy. Today's employee has changed, which requires us to have conversations to get them thinking long-term, not short-term. If they're stressed, to think about resilience. if they're going to quit or do something different, to think about how they're going to answer questions associated with the perceptions that that decision makes. But rest assured, today's employee has dramatically changed. Are you ready as a leadership coach to navigate with them? Thank you for listening to another episode of Coaching Conversations by Tim Hagen and Progress Coaching. Now, our company is always coming out with new and innovative solutions to help leaders coach their employees. And recently, we just created a new service called Coach to You, where leaders can pick and choose topics and assign 7 to 21-day programs for employees to learn and, more importantly, apply actions and then reflect and share what they're going to do going forward as a result of the learning. It's called Coach to You. We're literally bringing coaching to your employees. If you're intrigued, we'll have a link in each one of our episodes where you can get more information. And again, thank you so much for listening to another episode.